Did you know that in ancient Rome, sage was so highly valued that it was harvested with ceremony, and in medieval Europe it earned the title, the herb of immortality? Imagine that. A humble kitchen herb, growing quietly in a garden, once believed to hold the secret to long life and enduring wisdom. But here is the real question: what does modern science actually say about sage today? In this video, we are going to explore exactly that. We will look at what research tells us about two important varieties, Salvia officinalis, commonly known as common sage, and Salvia lavandulaefolia, often called Spanish sage. You will learn how sage may support memory and focus, how its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compounds work inside the body, what human clinical trials suggest about blood sugar and cholesterol markers, and how it may support digestion and microbial balance. Then we will shift into something just as important: how to use sage properly. I will walk you through precise brewing instructions for sage tea, practical culinary quantities, standardized supplement dosages, and crucial safety guidelines, especially regarding essential oils and Thujone content. By the end of this video, you will have a clear, science-backed understanding of sage's benefits and how to incorporate it responsibly into your daily routine. Let us begin with the brain. Because this is where sage has perhaps earned its strongest modern reputation. If you have ever struggled with mental fog, difficulty concentrating, or that frustrating moment of forgetting a name mid-sentence, you will understand why cognitive support matters. Interestingly, sage has been studied for exactly this purpose. Human clinical trials published in journals such as Phytomedicine have investigated extracts of Salvia officinalis and Salvia lavandulaefolia for their effects on memory and cognitive performance. In several randomized, placebo-controlled studies involving healthy adults, single doses of sage extract were associated with improvements in memory recall and attention tasks within hours of consumption. How might this work? One key mechanism involves acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter essential for learning and memory. Some compounds in sage appear to inhibit the enzyme acetylcholinesterase, which normally breaks down acetylcholine. By gently slowing that breakdown, acetylcholine activity may remain available for longer periods in the brain. This mechanism is similar in principle to certain pharmaceutical strategies used in cognitive research, although sage's effect is milder and should never be viewed as a replacement for medical therapy. What makes sage fascinating is that it may support cognitive performance in everyday situations, during exam preparation, demanding workdays, or long study sessions. Spanish sage, Salvia lavandulaefolia, has been particularly studied for its essential oil components in controlled trials. In one placebo-controlled crossover study, participants showed measurable improvements in attention and mood shortly after ingestion of a standardized preparation. These findings have also been indexed in PubMed databases, adding credibility to the evidence base. Now, does this mean sage makes you smarter overnight? Of course not. But the research suggests that sage may support aspects of working memory, focus, and alertness in healthy adults. That is a meaningful distinction. Support, not cure. Beyond cognition, sage carries a powerful biochemical profile that explains many of its broader effects. Let us talk about inflammation and oxidative stress, two processes that underlie many chronic conditions and general aging. Sage is rich in polyphenolic compounds, particularly rosmarinic acid and carnosic acid. Rosmarinic acid acts as a potent antioxidant. It helps neutralize free radicals, unstable molecules that can damage cells. When free radical production exceeds the body's antioxidant defenses, oxidative stress increases. Over time, that imbalance contributes to cellular wear and tear. Carnosic acid, found prominently in Salvia officinalis, has been studied for its ability to activate certain cellular pathways involved in antioxidant defense, including the NRF2 pathway. In simple language, this pathway helps switch on the body's internal protective systems. Rather than simply donating electrons as a classic antioxidant, carnosic acid may stimulate your cells to enhance their own resilience. Human and laboratory studies have consistently demonstrated anti-inflammatory properties of sage extracts. Rosmarinic acid, in particular, appears to modulate inflammatory mediators such as cytokines and prostaglandins. While much of this research begins in laboratory models, systematic reviews have acknowledged the anti-inflammatory potential of sage preparations, especially in relation to oral and metabolic health. Now let us move into evidence-based metabolic effects, because this is where many viewers become especially interested. Several small human clinical trials have examined the impact of sage on blood glucose markers. In randomized controlled studies involving individuals with mild metabolic concerns, standardized sage extracts have been associated with improvements in fasting blood glucose and certain lipid parameters. For example, some studies have observed modest reductions in total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol after several weeks of supplementation with Salvia officinalis leaf extract. These trials, indexed in PubMed, often involve controlled dosages over periods ranging from 4 to 12 weeks. It is important to interpret these results carefully. The improvements are generally modest and occur alongside dietary and lifestyle considerations. Sage is not a substitute for prescribed medication. However, the data suggest that sage may support healthy metabolic markers when used as part of a balanced routine. If you are someone who already prioritizes exercise, fiber intake, and balanced meals, incorporating sage into cooking or tea rituals may offer an additional layer of support. Speaking of rituals, let us talk about digestion. Traditionally, sage has been used to ease digestive discomfort. The European Medicines Agency monograph on Salvia officinalis recognizes its traditional use for mild dyspeptic complaints such as bloating and flatulence. Sage contains volatile oils and bitter compounds that may stimulate digestive secretions. In practical terms, this can mean improved breakdown of food and a reduction in feelings of heaviness after meals. Imagine enjoying a slightly heavy dinner, and later sipping a warm cup of sage tea that gently supports your digestive process. That is how traditional systems have applied this herb for centuries. In addition, sage exhibits antimicrobial properties in laboratory studies against certain bacteria and fungi. While these findings do not translate directly into medical treatment claims, they help explain why sage has historically been used in oral rinses and throat preparations. In fact, sage-based mouthwashes have been studied for supporting oral health and maintaining microbial balance in the mouth. Now that we understand the science, let us shift to something practical. How do you actually use sage safely and effectively? If you want to prepare sage tea, precision matters. Use approximately 1 to 2 grams of dried Salvia officinalis leaves per cup, which is about 1 teaspoon of crushed leaves. Heat water to roughly 90 to 95 degrees Celsius, just below boiling. Pour the hot water over the leaves, cover the cup to preserve volatile oils, and steep for 5 to 10 minutes. Strain, then sip slowly. Most traditional guidelines suggest up to 2 to 3 cups daily for short-term use. If you prefer culinary use, sage is potent. 1/4 to half a teaspoon of dried sage added to soups, stews, or roasted vegetables is usually sufficient for a family-sized dish. Fresh leaves can be finely chopped, with 2 to 3 small leaves often enough to flavor a meal. Sage pairs beautifully with legumes, poultry, and even whole grains. For standardized extracts, clinical studies often use doses in the range of 300 to 600 milligrams per day of a standardized leaf extract. Always follow product-specific instructions, and choose products that specify the botanical name and standardization details. Now let us address essential oil, because this is where caution becomes critical. Sage essential oil is highly concentrated and contains Thujone, a compound that can be neurotoxic in excessive amounts. Essential oil should never be ingested unless under the supervision of a qualified healthcare professional. For topical use, dilution is mandatory. A typical safe dilution ratio is 1 to 2% in a carrier oil. That translates to roughly 1 to 2 drops of essential oil per 5 milliliters of carrier oil. For diffusion, use only a few drops in a well-ventilated room for limited periods. And now, safety. Because of Thujone content, sage is generally not recommended during pregnancy or breastfeeding, especially in concentrated forms. Thujone may have uterine-stimulating properties and should be avoided during these sensitive periods. If you are taking medications for diabetes, monitor closely. Since sage may influence blood glucose levels, combining it with glucose-lowering drugs could potentially increase the risk of hypoglycemia. Consultation with a healthcare professional is essential. Similarly, individuals on anticoagulant therapy should exercise caution. While evidence is limited, sage contains compounds that may theoretically influence platelet function. Prudence is always wise. In terms of duration, continuous high-dose use of sage is generally not recommended beyond several weeks without professional guidance. Occasional culinary use is considered safe for most healthy adults, but concentrated extracts require more thoughtful use. Another important point, always ensure you are using the correct species. Salvia officinalis and Salvia lavandulaefolia are well studied. Some ornamental salvia species may not have the same safety profile, and certain plants that resemble sage are not true culinary sage at all. Purchase from reputable suppliers who clearly label botanical names. So where does this leave us? We began with an herb once called the herb of immortality. Today, science does not claim immortality, but it does reveal something meaningful. Sage contains bioactive compounds that support cognitive performance, provide antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity, and may gently assist metabolic and digestive health when used responsibly. It is not a miracle. It is not a cure. It is a thoughtfully studied plant with a respectable body of evidence behind it, supported by clinical trials indexed in PubMed and traditional recognition from authorities like the European Medicines Agency. Perhaps wisdom is not about living forever, but about making informed, balanced choices that support our well-being day by day. If you have used sage tea during a busy week, added it to your cooking, or explored supplements under professional guidance, I would love to hear your experience. Share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found this video valuable, please like it so others can discover this information. Subscribe to the channel for more science-backed wellness content, and share this video with someone who might benefit from learning about this remarkable herb. And remember, the ancients associated sage with wisdom for a reason. True wellness is not about chasing immortality. It is about cultivating knowledge, applying it carefully, and honoring the quiet power of nature with respect and discernment.